Proverbs, that's where we'll start this morning. Proverbs chapter 30. Proverbs chapter 30 is where we will begin. Proverbs chapter 30 this morning, I'm going to start reading in verse 1. I'm going to read verse 1 through 9. Proverbs chapter 30, verses 1 through 9. The Bible reads in Proverbs chapter 30, verse 1, the words of Agur, the son of Jacob, even the prophecy. The man spake unto Ithiel, even unto Ithiel and Ucal. Surely I am more brutish than any man, and have not the understanding of a man. I neither learned wisdom, nor have the knowledge of the holy. Who hath ascended up into heaven, or descended? Who hath gathered the wind in his fists? Who hath bound the waters in a garment? Who hath established all the ends of the earth? What is his name? And what is his son's name, if thou canst tell? Every word of God is pure. He is a shield unto them that put their trust in him. Add thou not unto his words, lest he reprove thee, and thou be found a liar. 2 things have I required of thee. Deny me them not before I die. Remove far from me vanity and lies. Give me neither poverty nor riches. Feed me with food convenient for me. Lest I be full and deny thee, and say, who is the Lord? Or lest I be poor, and steal and take the name of my God in vain. Let's bow and have a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, I thank you for this day, Lord. I thank you for your many blessings to us and for your word. Lord, I pray that you'll help us to gain some knowledge and insight this morning, Lord, that we can take and apply to our lives, Lord, and that we can take and tell to others, Lord, as far as our reasoning behind certain things. Lord, I pray now that you will help me to get out of the way and that your words will come through clearly and easily understood this morning. If there be anyone here this morning that doesn't know you, Lord, I pray that they will come to know you, calling upon the name of the Lord to be saved. In Jesus' name, amen. Proverbs chapter 30, a couple of things about Proverbs chapter 30. Number one, Proverbs chapter 30, as we see in verse 1, is not written by Solomon. Sometimes people think the entire book of Proverbs is written by Solomon, but that is not the case. The last 2 chapters are written by others, are written by Lemuel, and in this case, Agur. Now, this is the 5th Sunday of the month, and on the 5th Sunday of the month, sometimes I try to get something a little bit different in a sermon, a little bit topical. And so this morning, I'm going to talk about a big event that happened this week in our nation. I'm going to talk about playing the lottery this morning. I don't know if anybody here plays the lottery. Show of hands. No, we're not going to show hands or anything like that, as far as anyone playing the lottery. But I'm going to give you some thoughts this morning on playing the lottery. It's actually a question that I get asked about a fair amount of time by other Christians. And let me just say this about questions that you ask a pastor about something where you say, hey, is this okay for me to do? Is this not okay for me to do? I am not going to endorse anything that you do, okay? If you have to ask the pastor, is this okay? Chances are you're asking out of guilt, and it's probably not okay. Okay, just as far as that goes, Now, is playing the lottery, does it hurt anybody or anything? I won't be getting into any of that kind of thing. But the Bible does have guidelines for every aspect of our lives, including playing the lottery. It is in here. Because a lot of Christians, for example, I know a lot of Christians that drink alcohol. And, they are real Bible experts when it comes to what the Bible says about alcohol to justify their sin. Now, look, a lot of Christians drink alcohol. Probably a lot of Christians, I'm sure a lot of Christians, play the lottery. But just because a lot does it doesn't make it right. So, we'll take a look at that here this morning. And I chose this passage first, but I'm going to go to several passages this morning about playing the lottery. But before I get into that, let's talk about the lottery itself in the United States of America. I have a few numbers for you that are interesting when we are deciding if we should play the lottery or not. So if you play the lottery, you have a 1 in 14 million chance of winning a big prize. Okay? A big prize, according to the statistics that I found, is defined as $200,000 or more. Of course, we know that someone just hit it big, right? They won 2 something billion dollars. They did not win $1.2 billion. Okay, let's come to church and get accurate information. Whoever won that lottery will never see $1.2 billion. Okay, that is a marketing ploy. Yeah, they'll take a lump sum of $300 or $400 million. Because all of them do, that would ever be. You're like, well, $300 or $400 million, that's still plenty. And you're right, that's still plenty for one person. However, it is less than half of $1.2 billion. This is, and look, if the government's going to exaggerate in that area, don't you think they exaggerate in pretty much every area when it comes to numbers? Again, do not trust anything that the government tells you. Because our government is corrupt. It is godless. And it is all about money. And the people that run it are corrupt. They are 95% probably godless, and all they care about is money. So, just so so we get that out of the way. Now, the lottery that was just recently won, the ticket that won it had a 1 in 326 million chance of winning. So if you played the lottery this past week, you had a 1 in 326 million chance of winning on every ticket that you bought. So a couple of other things about the lotteries. Lotteries are run by the government. So lotteries are run by the states. So you have, in this case of this last big lottery, it's 45 states that have gotten together in this lottery, but it is a government-run, government-regulated business. That means that the state will always win. Okay? So the state brings in the lottery in the United States of America brings in $70 billion a year. $70 billion worth of tickets are sold per year. And so this guy that won, or this lady or whoever that won $1.2 billion, that's not a large part of that. That's why the states are in this kind of business. Because they get way more than that, actually. So they get to $70 billion per year. They pay out about 65% of that to winners. But then they get about half of that back in taxes. So they come out pretty good. Okay? And they actually get more than half of that back in taxes when you consider the amount of taxes that states get on lottery winnings. Okay? So, for example, if I win $350 million in a lottery and I buy a house that is worth $6 million, the state's going to get tons of taxes off of that every year in personal property taxes, etc. So they will always be way ahead in this. Now, if the lotteries bring in $70 billion a year, that means that is $218 for every man, woman, and child in the United States of America. So there are, people that play the lottery, once a week or more than that or whatever. They spend, the average, for every American is $218. Now, not every American plays the lottery. The biggest block of people who play the lottery are the people who can least afford it. People who make less than $30,000 a year who play the lottery spend an average of $450 a year on the lottery, according to a CBS poll. So they, the people that can least afford it are the ones who play because they're the ones who want to hit it big. So that's just some information. Also, a little bit more of information about the lottery. 70% of big money lottery winners, people who win $200,000 or more, go bankrupt within 5 years. Money does not fix all of your problems, you see. So 70% go bankrupt within 5 years. Now, here's where the states like to get you. They say, oh, well, the lottery is for a good cause, right? It's for education. So when you're spending money on the lottery, you're supporting education. That has been proven to be false by people out there in the world. Because the way this works is, because, our schools are always saying they don't have enough money, right? I mean, schools are always asking for money. And yet, how is it that they're getting this money? This is not bonus money for schools. This is the way the government gets people to buy lottery tickets. It's for a good cause. 25% goes to education. 65% goes back to the lottery winners. But if a state has a budget for its schools of, let's say, $100 million, and that state brings in $25 million for lotteries, it will put that money in the school budget, and it will take out $25 million from the school budget and use it somewhere else. That is what they do, and that's what they all do. And this has been proven out. You can research this online. This is what the government does. Hey, it's for education. The fact is, the budget for the school is the budget for the school. And any lottery money goes in there, and then we take other money out and spend it somewhere else. That way we can honestly tell our stupid, naive constituents that the money is for education, and they will believe us. So that's the lottery in a nutshell for you in the United States of America. It is not everything that it's cracked up to be. Okay? So don't necessarily believe everything that you hear. Now, here in Proverbs chapter 30, let's take a look at a couple of biblical examples. The Bible doesn't really say anything specifically about the lottery, so we will read a few passages that just cover a broad range of ideas in the Bible as regards to this, and you can decide for yourself if the lottery is right for you. So, here we go. Proverbs chapter 30, we have this guy named Agur in Proverbs chapter 30, verse 1. His name is Agur, and verse 2, I find this interesting. Verse 2, he says, surely I am more brutish than any man, and have not the understanding of a man. I neither learned wisdom nor have the knowledge of the holy. So what does this say? What is this guy Agur saying? Agur's saying basically, I'm just a regular fella. Okay? I didn't go to college. I'm not a preacher or anything like that. But I will tell you that some of the most valuable common sense advice that I have gotten in my life are from Agurs. Men like Agur, who did not go to college, who are not biblical scholars, and yet they are extremely intelligent and they know a lot of stuff. I think about some of the people who I have known here, who I greatly respect for their knowledge. They are not known as intelligent people, okay? I think about, for example, Brother Bill Oakes. A wealth of knowledge and common sense. Brother Dennis Morgan. Brother Bob Paxton. Think about these guys. How wise are they? Were they? When they spoke, you listened because, if you want to know how to plant or something like that, Brother Kenny, who's not here this morning, he's recovering, extremely smart. If he gives you some advice, you should really listen to it. But he'll tell you right now, hey, look, I didn't go to college. I'm not a Bible scholar or anything like that. Doesn't matter. So that's the kind of guy Agur is. So the reason God put his words in the Bible is because it's a lot of common sense stuff that we should know. Look at verse 7, where Agur says here in verse 7, 2 things have I required of thee. He's talking to God. He's praying to God here. 2 things have I required of thee. Deny me them not before I die. So here are Agur's requests. Remove far from me vanity and lies. Now look, lottery winners are surrounded by vanity and lies. This guy doesn't want anything to do with vanity and lies. Because, if you are, let's say that you are I'm just going to take a random hypothetical example. Let's say that you are a woman in her mid-50s who weighs 300 pounds and you won the lottery. You're going to have a lot of guys lined up telling you how good looking you are. That's vanity and lies. That's reality, okay? Same thing goes for the guys as well, by the way. I mean, have you seen, these billionaire guys who are in their 80s with their wives? Look, you know why they married those billionaires. Not for their looks, not for their personality, for one thing. When you die, I get all of your money. Okay? That's really it. That's it. So vanity and lies surround lottery winners. Okay? Now look at what else he says. Give me neither poverty nor riches. Feed me with food convenient for me. So he says, I don't really want to be rich, but I also don't want to be poor. And he says, here's the reasons why. In verse 9, lest I be full and deny thee and say, who is the Lord? People who have a lot of money are like, what do I need? I don't need God. I'm in good shape. Yeah, I have everything that I need. So if you get too rich, you stop relying on the Lord. And then he says there also, though, lest I be poor and steal and take the name of my God in vain. He says, look, I don't want to be poor either, because that could cause me to break the law. That could cause me to be bitter against God because I'm poor. So this, you can see how wise Agur is. I don't want to be rich and deny God. At the same time, I don't want to be poor and be bitter against God. Makes perfect sense to me. And it makes, so that's one reason why God puts this in the Bible. So a lot of people, they want to be rich. That's why that's the only reason to play the lottery. Don't give me anything else about it. You play the lottery because you are fantasizing about being a millionaire. That's why you play. Why else would you spend that money and not get anything but a piece of paper in return? Because you have the hope of quitting your job, whatever, doing things, all day long that you just want to do, just plain whatever, those kinds of things. So that's why people play the lottery, to get rich quick. That's why people who do win the lottery oftentimes squander their money and go bankrupt because they have no idea how to handle money. Because, look, God set things up for a reason. And look, when I was young, I was poor a lot. And I was like, man, wouldn't it be nice to win the lottery? But the reason I was poor is really because I had no idea how to handle money. No idea. I mean, I got into deep credit card debt, not knowing how to handle money. Now that I'm older, I have learned some lessons. I know a little more how to handle money. And so I have more money, even though I don't make that much more. But I have a lot of extra money because I don't spend it on things that I don't need or can't afford, which is what a lot of young people do. So look, God understands it. Look, the way to be successful is to gradually build up that money and experience over time, and you get to where you need to go. And Proverbs bears that out. So let me look at a couple of things in Proverbs. Let's go to Proverbs chapter 28. We'll just back a couple of chapters there. Proverbs chapter 28. What does the Bible say in verse 6 of Proverbs 28? And I'm just going to scratch the surface with a few verses here this morning. Better is the poor that walketh in his uprightness than he that is perverse in his ways, though he be rich. Look, it is better to be poor and do things right than to be rich and cut corners. That's consistent all throughout the Bible. Go down to verse 8. I like this verse right here because these verses, you can think of a lot of applications. Verse 8, he that by usury and unjust gain increaseth his substance. Now, by the way, that is The lottery winner right there, unjust gain. Okay? He that by usury and unjust gain increaseth his substance, he shall gather it for him that will pity the poor. He gets his gain for him that will pity the poor. Because the fact is, when you win the lottery, for example, the government who has a lot of these, things for the poor, these programs and everything, they get most of your money. So, those that have unjust gain, they gather it for those that pity the poor, because you're going to wind up frittering it all away. If it was easy come, what is that secular saying? Easy come, easy go. And so, that's why you see that kind of thing. Now, jump down to verse 19. Verse 19. He that tilleth his land shall have plenty of bread, but he that followeth after vain persons shall have poverty enough. The way to be successful, and, look, I could do a whole sermon and spend hours talking about the importance of being diligent, of tilling, of working to gain what you have. He that tilleth will have plenty of bread. But those that are just following after vain persons and trying to, latch on and get rich quick or whatever, they will have poverty enough. These are biblical concepts here. Go with me back to Proverbs 13. Proverbs chapter 13, verse 4. Proverbs chapter 13, verse 4. The soul of the sluggard desireth and hath nothing, but the soul of the diligent shall be made fat. Most lottery winners, why 70% of them go bankrupt within 5 years, is because most people who play the lottery, most, not all, if you play the lottery, again, just be prepared to have your toes stepped on if you play the lottery. But most people who play the lottery, most people are lazy people. That's why they play the lottery, because they want easy street. They don't want to have to struggle for things. That's why they do it. And so, but the diligent in general do not play the lottery. Do you think that millionaires play the lottery? Not really. Elon Musk or who's the guy, Warren Buffett or any of those guys, you think they, Warren Buffett, is he the rich guy that is known for living frugally? Rich people that are rich and successful and are able to maintain that are the guys that live in, a $100,000 house, and they just, they live almost like normal people. Like, that guy, I think that's who I'm thinking about, Warren Buffett. But, there are some rich guys, and they would say, absolutely not. No way am I going to play the lottery. The risk greatly outweighs the rewards. This is why they're rich. This is why they have money quite often. Let's see, verse 7. Verse 7, there is that maketh himself rich, yet hath nothing. There is that maketh himself poor, yet hath great riches. Because money is not the key to happiness. And look, if you want more examples of that, just read the entire book of Ecclesiastes. Money is not the key to happiness. There are people that make themselves rich who are empty and miserable. There are people that make themselves poor who are extremely happy people. And you can make yourself poor. How about by having, several kids? Because we live in a day and age where a lot of couples don't have kids. Oh, can't afford kids. I look back at, for example, my father's family. He was the 9th out of 10. They got by on one income. They got by in a house with one bathroom. By all accounts, it was a happy, childhood that he had. I grew up in a, family that did not have a lot of money. I had a very happy childhood. There were only 3 of us. I had 3 kids. The reason that I don't have a great house or a nice car It's because I made myself poor, because I had 3 kids. So that's the reason why I do not have the nicest things in the world. But I look back and I wouldn't trade it for the nicest things in the world. See, there are those that make themselves rich thinking that money will get them happiness. It does not. Then there are those that make themselves poor. If you start to have children, you're going to find a lot of happiness, and you're going to find you don't have any money. But which one would you rather have when you look back at your life? So, that's kind of what Proverbs chapter 13 is about there. And let's look at Proverbs chapter 13, verse 11. Another good verse if you want to say, hey, what does the Bible say about playing the lottery? Again, because if you play the lottery, I'm going to make an assumption that you are playing it because you would like to win it. So Proverbs chapter 11, verse 13. Proverbs chapter 13, verse 11. Wealth gotten by vanity shall be diminished, but he that gathereth by labor shall increase. There you go. Wealth gotten by vanity is not going to last. But wealth gotten by labor that's a good thing. The Bible is never just a blanket anti-rich people. Or, hey, look, you're well off. Oh, well, you must be living in sin if you're well off. Because sometimes people will like to tell you that. No, how did you get the wealth? And all good things come from God. And he blesses us on everything. And there are a lot of Christians in this world who have a lot of money partly because they're saved, but partly because they're saved and they live right. Because you can take a person that makes $100,000 a year and they can be completely broke because they're not living right, because they're spending a lot of money on cigarettes, on alcohol, on drugs, and that kind of thing. You can take another person who's a Christian that makes $100,000 a year and they can have anything that they want because they do not spend their money on alcohol and drugs and tobacco and things like that will suck up the money right out of your pocket. And so there's nothing wrong with being successful. But trying to just get rich quick, I think the Bible is pretty clearly against that. Let's go to the New Testament and take a look at a couple of things there. Let's take a look at a Christian lottery winner in the New Testament, because there is one, a Christian lottery winner in the New Testament. Let's take a look at Luke chapter 15. Luke chapter 15, a very famous story that we often read to apply the spiritual application, because this is a parable of Jesus Christ, but let's not forget the literal application as well. And that is the story of the prodigal son in Luke chapter 15. Now, the prodigal son is a Christian in the parable. So we'll just assume it's a Christian as well for our purposes here. Luke chapter 15, verse 11, Jesus said, here in Luke chapter 15, verse 11, and he said, a certain man who had 2 sons, and the younger of them said to his father, Father, give me the portion of goods that falleth to me. And he divided unto them his living. So his son, here this young man, has won the lottery because he got his inheritance. He took it. He decided not to have it, in a 20-year annuity. He took it all in a lump sum, like lottery winners do today. Verse 13, and not many days after, the younger son gathered all together and took his journey into a far country, and there wasted his substance with riotous living. So many lottery winners say, "Oh no, I'll win all that money, but it's not going to change me." Wrong. It will. It will lower your needs for discipline in your life, and you will just wind up, hey, because I can, I might as well. Don't listen to what people say. Money absolutely changes people, especially if you get a ton of money at one time, like this young man did. He is not able to handle the inheritance. That's why he should be waiting. But he says, hey, give it to me now. I'll take it all in one lump sum. And then what does he do? He blows it all He goes into a far country. Let me get away from dad, and then let me spend it all on riotous living. Verse 14, and when he had spent all, there arose a mighty famine in that land, and he began to be in want. See, you should not spend all of your money. You should have some savings, because there will be a famine. Your air conditioner will go out, and your car will break. In the same month, that's a famine, okay? You should have a little bit of money to handle that. This guy did not have any in reserve for hard times. He didn't. So we see here in verse 15, and he went and joined himself to a citizen of that country, and he sent him into his fields to feed swine. And he would faint have filled his belly with the husk that the swine did eat, and no man gave unto him. And when he came to himself, and if you study lottery winners, the 70% that go bankrupt and that kind of thing, they oftentimes, during the interviews that these people have, when they do this, they will come to themselves. You know, one of the biggest that I can remember locally, and particularly locally when I was growing up in West Virginia, was a big lottery winner in West Virginia who has since passed away. He won the lottery in the 90s, like $300 million or something like that. It was crazy. And, you know, he already had a lot of money when he won it because he was like a contractor or something like that. And it destroyed his family. His granddaughter, who never had to work for anything, died of a drug overdose in either her late teens or early 20s. And, you know, because she got this boyfriend that was into drugs. Because, you see, when you have a lot of money, you get people around you that are not worth anything. And that's what this guy did. And so when they interviewed this guy, he said, I wish I had never cashed that ticket. And so many of them will say that. They regret winning the lottery. This young man regretted winning his inheritance. Because it says there in verse 17, and when he came to himself, he said, how many hired servants of my fathers have bread enough and to spare, and I perish with hunger. He's like, my father's employees have more than they need. My own dad. And here I am starving. He said, I will arise and go to my father and will say unto him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before thee, and am no more worthy to be called thy son. Make me as one of thy hired servants. And he arose and came to his father. But when he was yet a great way off, his father saw him and had compassion on him and ran and fell on his neck and kissed him. Because, of course, when you're a Christian, you're always welcome back. You know, in the fold. That's a great thing about being a Christian that a lot of people don't really realize. You can make mistakes. You can come to yourself. God is the God of many chances. But, you know, a lot of times we apply the spiritual application of this passage, but let's not forget the physical application as well. There's a lesson being taught there, right here. You know, don't be in a hurry to get all that you can get right now, because it can cause you nothing but troubles. Of course, when we're talking about the lottery, when we're talking about, you know, money and that kind of thing, let's end with 1 Timothy chapter 6. 1 Timothy chapter 6, a great place to end our sermon here on the lottery. And again, you know, reading these passages, I'm going to say that according to the Bible, so if anybody ever asks me, reading these passages according to the Bible, we should not be playing the lottery. Now, if you can find some verses that justify your playing the lottery, I am willing to hear those. These are verses I feel that justify not desiring to get rich quick, because it will only cause problems, heartaches, troubles, difficulties. That's what I get out of the verses that I've gone through, and I could spend another hour going through verses in the Bible on this, and none of them would approve of get-rich-quick schemes. And look, the lottery is the definition of that. That's the only reason people play, is to get rich quick, is to have that chance. So 1 Timothy chapter 6, here's the conclusion of the matter in verse 6 of chapter 6. But godliness with contentment is great gain. For we brought nothing into this world, and it is certain we can carry nothing out. You cannot take anything with you when you leave this world. Nothing. There are people that have been buried in their cars and whatever, and I've heard of all sorts of things like that. Waste of time, waste of money. There's nobody driving a car in hell or heaven. Okay? Verse 8, and having food and raiment, basic needs there, let us be there with content. Verse 9, but they that will be rich fall into temptation and a snare and into many foolish and hurtful lusts, which drown men in destruction and perdition. The key to not playing the lottery is to change your attitude about being rich. Understand that they that desire to be rich are going to fall into all kinds of troubles trying to get there. That's what this verse is about. Verse 10, of course, is the famous verse. For the love of money is the root of all evil, which while some covet after, they have erred from the faith and pierced themselves through with many sorrows. Every one of us have seen examples of the love of money being the root of all evil. If you live in a family who has had to deal with an inheritance, with more than one people getting that inheritance, like children or whatever, you will see that the love of money is the root of all evil. I have seen both sets of my grandparents pass, so that my mother's family and my father's family had to divide up an inheritance. And neither one of my grandparents had that much money at all, but they had a house and various things like that. And I have seen arguments on both sides with a pitiful inheritance at stake. People will do anything for a few $100s. We as Christians need to understand that godliness with contentment is great gain. We need to learn as Paul learned, to be in whatever state that we're in, to be content. Whether we're in good shape currently or whether we're in bad shape currently. Whether we're having good success and racking up a little bit in savings, or whether we are having a couple of financial hits that's draining our savings. Learn to be content in whatever state that you're in. And I contend to you that people who play the lottery, I don't care what they say, oh, it's just harmless, oh, I just play just to have fun. They are not content with the state that they're in. Otherwise, they would not waste money like that on such a small chance of return. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you for this day, Lord, and for your word and for the truths that it holds. Whether we want to know those truths or not, Lord, they are there for us to find. And any question that we have that covers our lives in the United States of America in 2022, we can find the answers to those questions in the Bible, whether we want to know those answers or not. But Lord, help us to learn those. Help us to learn, Lord, to be content with what you have given us, to be content with the clothes, with the shelter, with the food. Help us to understand that you have blessed us beyond measure. And Lord, help us to be grateful for that. In Jesus' name.